The wind chimes rattled hard against the porch, sharp as bones in the gale. Thunder rolled low, crawling under the sky like something wounded. Elias Ward rode straight into it. Head down, coat drenched, fist clenched around a small cloth doll. A doll carrying a name no stranger should know. A name whispered to him this morning by a child he'd never met. A name belonging to a girl who, by every account, wasn't supposed to be alive. The wind chimes rattled against the porch, tapping out a thin, lonely music that carried through the storm like something half-forgotten. Elias Ward stood under the eaves, coat dripping, hat low, boots shutting mud in slow, heavy drops. The world felt small in that moment. Closed in. Hollow. He hadn't meant to stop here. Hadn't meant to step off his horse at all. But the storm had a way of forcing a man inward, and the sound of those chimes, sharp, metallic, unsettled, kept pulling his attention toward the old rocking chair by the wall. That was where he saw it. A cloth doll. Soaked through. Face hand-stitched with care. A child's careful treasure abandoned in a place where no child had set foot in years. He bent down, the chair groaning as the wind pushed it. The doll's fabric clung to his fingers. And there, on the small dag tucked beneath its dress, was a name he had not heard in years. A name that shouldn't exist out here, miles from any family, any town, any reason. Lily. He whispered at once. The wind chimes answered with a soft, hesitant tremble. Elias had lived alone long enough to trust silence over signs. Yet the doll felt like a cry left on his doorstep. A plea for someone he had never met. Someone small. Someone lost. He stepped inside the cabin, setting the doll on the table beside a lantern whose flame wavered at the storm's pressure. The floorboards shifted under his weight, the whole cabin breathing like an old animal trying to outlast winter. He unlaced his gloves. Sat. Stared. Not my business, he muttered. But the name kept echoing in the room. In his skull. In the chimes that tapped again when the wind shifted. Lily. He grabbed the doll again, frustrated at how light it was, how easily the world could take a child who clung to something this small for comfort. Elias hadn't protected anyone in a long time. He'd chosen that, carved a quiet life from the edges of the map where no one asked him for hope. Yet here hope was anyway. Sewn into a doll. Left in a storm. He saddled his horse before reason could argue. The storm swallowed him as he rode. Trees bent. Lightning flared in distant snarls. The chimes behind him grew faint, then vanished. Hours later, near dusk, he found movement on the trail, small footsteps in the mud, staggered and hurried. He followed them through brush and rain until he saw the outline of a child curled beneath a fallen log. She looked up when he approached, eyes wide, cheeks streaked with mud and fear. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "Please, don't leave me." Elias lifted her into his arms. The storm eased. Somewhere behind them, a distant gust stirred the forgotten chimes. Dawn crept over the ridge in weak, silver strokes, the kind that carried more cold than light. Elias stepped out onto the porch, boots scraping frost, the wind chimes giving a brittle clink as if shivering in the early air. He held the door open just long enough for the warmth inside to brush his back before closing it off again. The child, Lily, slept by the fire. He didn't want the cold touching her. His horse pawed the ground. Restless. Uneasy. As if something in the distance carried the wrong kind of quiet. Elias followed its gaze. A lone figure pressed through the tree line, hunched over the saddle horn, drifting like a leaf caught in its lost fall. The man swayed. Nearly toppled. But the horse kept him upright out of sheer habit. Elias's breath fanned. He moved down the steps, hand near his holster but not drawing. Not yet. The wind dropped for a heartbeat. Silence. Then the stranger's horse stumbled, hooves dragging across frozen earth. The wind chimes behind Elias answered with a slow, uncertain tap. The stranger slumped forward. Elias grabbed him before he fell. The man's skin burned with fever. His coat was torn at the shoulder, crusted with blood. Each breath sounded like a nail scraping through his chest. Elias carried him inside, setting him on the rug near the fire. The warmth hit the man's face and coaxed a faint groan from his throat. Lily stirred but didn't speak. She watched from under a blanket, small and silent, her eyes following every strained breath the man took. Elias checked the wound. Deep. Dirty. Old enough to fester. He poured hot water over it, the man jerking at the first touch. The stranger's eyes blinked open. Clouded. Searching. He whispered something. Barely a thread of sound. Elias leaned close. "Save your breath." The man shook his head. Tried again. This time, the word came through. "Lily." Elias froze. The fire popped behind him, sending sparks upward like startled birds. Lily pulled her blanket tighter but didn't look away. Elias spoke slowly. "You know her?" The man gave the faintest nod. Then, a cough that sounded wet, final. His voice scraped through the room like a stone dragged across wood. "Bring her home." Elias felt the child behind him stiffen. He didn't turn. Not yet. "Home where?" he asked. The stranger lifted a trembling hand toward his coat pocket. Elias searched it and pulled out a folded scrap of paper. A map. Crude lines. A ridge. A river bend. A small X under a name. Banning. The fire dimmed as if recoiling. Elias's jaw tightened. He'd heard that name before. Too many times. Never spoken with anything but dread. Lily hid further beneath her blanket. When the wind outside rose, the chimes tapped again, faint, questioning. The man tried to sit up. Elias pressed him down. "Don't waste yourself. Just talk." The stranger swallowed, throat working like it hurt to remember. "Hunting her," he rasped. "Won't stop till she's claimed." Elias glanced at Lily. Her breath hitched. Fear flickered in her eyes like a candle fighting the draft. He looked back to the man. "Who sent you to me?" The stranger blinked. Pain stole half his voice. "Woman. Dying. Said your name. Said you'd keep the child safe. Said the doll would lead you." The room tightened. Elias felt the cold behind his ribs again, that old, quiet emptiness he thought he'd buried. Someone out there knew him. Knew he'd run from the world. Knew he'd failed people before. The man coughed again, shuddering. Elias reached for water, but the man raised a weak hand. "No more," he whispered. His eyes shifted toward Lily. Soft. Apologetic. She didn't deserve any of it. The wind outside carried a low, mournful note through the chimes. Lily trembled. The fire crackled as the man's last breath rattled free. A final scrape. A final stillness. Silence returned to the cabin. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy kind that settles over a room after something important leaves it. Lily stepped closer, standing beside Elias, the edge of her blanket dragging across the wood. She stared at the man, but there were no tears. Only a quiet resignation that no child should know. Elias covered the stranger with his coat. He set the map near the lantern. Its edges curled in the warm air. Outside, the cold waited. He could feel it pressing against the cabin walls. Inside, the fire warmed Lily's small hands, but not her shaking. Elias crouched to meet her gaze. "You know who he meant?" She nodded. A tiny motion. "Barely there." "Banning," she whispered. The name wobbled, then his smoke. "He says I belong to him." Elias's gut clenched. He looked toward the door where the morning light leaked in. A faint gleam on frost. A reminder that danger was coming with the next sunrise. The wind pushed the chimes once more. A lonely clatter. Lily reached for his sleeve. Not grabbing. Just finding. Anchoring. "I don't want to go back," she whispered. Elias stared at the map. At the stranger's still form. At the child who shouldn't know fear like this. Warmth from the fire brushed his cheek. Cold seeped from the walls. Two worlds pressing against him, waiting for his choice. He stood up, pulled a blanket around Lily's shoulders, and began preparing a grave. The grave stood small beneath the pines, the morning frost tightening around it like a clenched fist. Elias stamped the last mound of dirt, the cold biting through his gloves, while Lily stood beside him wrapped in a blanket too big for her thin shoulders. The air held no birdsong, only the faint tap of the wind chimes drifting from the cabin porch behind them. A lonely echo carried farther than it should. Lily watched the grave without blinking, her breath fogged in slow, uneven clouds. Elias cleared his throat. "We ride soon." She nodded once, as if decisions no longer surprised her. Inside the cabin, warmth clung to the hearthstones, the last timbers glowing like tired eyes. Elias gathered provisions, pardak, jerky, a single can of peaches he'd been saving for no one in particular. He left it on the table for Lily. She picked it up silently. Outside, the cold slapped them as soon as they stepped out. The chimes tapped again, brittle, almost warning. Elias lifted her onto the horse, her small hands gripping the saddle horn, knuckles pale. They started north, toward the ridge, toward the place marked on the stranger's crude map. The trail was narrow, the ground frozen enough that the horse's hoofs snapped twigs like breaking bones. Lily leaned forward, keeping low, eyes scanning the woods as if expecting shadows to step out. Elias felt it too. A pressure, like someone watching from behind the pines. They rode on. Around midday, the wind picked up. Cold knifed through Elias's coat. He glanced at Lily. She was shaking, trying not to show it. He slowed the horse, pulled her close, wrapped his own coat around her. Warmth gathered between them. Thin at first, then steadier. Lily's trembling eased. She rested her cheek against his chest. "Does he know we're coming?" she asked. "No," Elias asked, though he already knew. "Banning." Elias felt the cold carve down his spine. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe not." But the truth tasted darker. Men like Banning always knew. As they pushed deeper into the timberline, the silence sharpened. No chirping, no rustling, only the horses breathing and the crunch of frost under hooves. Near the river bend, Elias spotted a set of tracks, fresh. Boots. Several pairs. Pressing south, toward his cabin. His jaw tightened. They'd missed him by hours. Or less. He said nothing to Lily, but she sensed the shift in him. Her fingers curled around his coat. They rode faster. Cold air burned their lungs. Branches clawed at Elias's sleeves. The sky dimmed with gathering clouds. By late afternoon, the trail narrowed into rock and scrub. Hidden in a fold of land was a tiny homestead, more a shack than a house. Smoke drifted from its chimney in thin, ghost-like threads. Lily stiffened. "That's it," she whispered. "My mother lived there." Warmth fought to rise in Elias's chest, but the cold ruled the air around him. He dismounted first, lifting her down gently. The yard was quiet. Too quiet. As they approached, the door creaked open a hand's width. A young boy peeked out. Face smudged. Eyes wide. He held a small stick like it was a weapon. Elias raised a hand. "We are not here to harm you." The boy didn't lower the stick. He stared at Lily instead. "You're her," he whispered. "The girl they're hunting." Lily stepped closer, voice trembling. "Do you know my mother?" Before the boy could answer, something shifted in the woods, branches snapping. Elias's hand dropped to his holster. The boy gasped and slammed the door shut. For a moment, all was still. Only the distant rush of the river broke the silence. Then a raven's cry cut across the trees, sharp, urgent. Elias scanned the ridge. Nothing moved, but the tension crawled under his skin. Lily tugged his sleeve. "Please, we have to go inside." The door reopened slowly. A woman's voice called from within. "Bring her in, quickly." Elias ushered Lily through, following after. Inside, the shack was warm, too warm compared to the biting air outside. A fire snapped in the hearth. A kettle hissed softly on a metal hook. The sudden warmth washed over Lily's face, bringing life back to her cheeks. The woman, a stern figure with tired eyes, studied Elias. "You bring trouble to my door," she said. "Trouble found us first," Elias answered. She glanced toward Lily. "Banning's men came this morning, asking questions, threatening. Said a child ran from him." Her jaw clenched. "They're not far." Lily backed up until she was against Elias's leg. He rested a hand on her shoulder. The woman's gaze softened. "You're safe here for the night, but no longer. He'll burn this place down to get what he wants." Warmth filled the shack, but fear lived in its corners. The fire crackled. The kettle hissed. Outside, the cold pressed against the walls like a waiting predator. Lily looked up at Elias. "Where do we go now?" Elias didn't answer right away. He listened to the wind curling around the shack. Listened for the chimes that weren't there. Listened for anything that might carry Banning's name. Finally he spoke, voice steady. "We go where he won't expect." Lily nodded, trusting him in a way he hadn't earned yet. Night fell heavy. Warmth stayed close to the fire. Cold prowled the dark outside. And Elias knew the road ahead was narrowing. With every mile, the danger grew closer. And the girl beside him, she was the reason he'd keep riding. The cabin carried the scent of pine smoke and old timber, the kind of warmth that settled into a man's bones whether he welcomed it or not. Elias pushed the door open, letting Lily step inside first. Her small boots left watery prints on the floorboards, prints that made the quiet space feel less empty, less abandoned. The fire he'd left smoldering overnight brightened when he fed it fresh kindling, flames rising with a soft crackle that nudged the cold back toward the walls. Lily hovered near the hearth. Hands out, palms trembling. But the heat coaxed color back into her cheeks, bit by bit. Elias hung his coat on a peg. The wind outside dragged the chimes into a lazy rattle, the faint sound weaving into the room like a memory returning uninvited. He walked to the table. The cloth doll lay where he'd left it. Still damp. Still carrying that impossible name. Lily approached slowly. She didn't touch it. Just stared. "That's mine," she whispered. Elias watched her shoulders rise and fall. "Then take it," he said. She hesitated, then picked it up with both hands, holding it with a kind of care that told him it was more than a toy. A link. A thread. A reminder of something she didn't yet have words for. The fire cracked louder. A small pop. The sound made her flinch. Elias noticed. "Safe here," he said. "You understand?" She nodded, though her eyes tracked every shadow like something might crawl out of them. He set about making food. Cornmeal. A strip of pork. Hot water for tea. The room grew warmer as the smell drifted through the air, simple, honest food that wrapped itself around the silence. While he worked, Lily found. Soft. Barely there. A tune that followed the same rhythm as the chimes and storms passed, the same lullaby the dying rider had murmured before his breath gave out. Elias stiffened. "You know that song?" Lily froze mid-hum. Her head tilted, as though puzzled by her own voice. "My mama used to sing it," she said. She said her brother taught it to her when she was small. Brother. The word struck like a hammer. Elias turned to face her fully. "What was your mother's name?" Lily answered without hesitation. "Mary." The fire snapped again. The warmth thinned. Elias felt the cold hand of memory brush down his spine. Mary. A name he'd buried years ago. A sister lost to a world that chewed up anyone without coin or power. He hadn't known she had a child. Hadn't known she'd live long enough to have one. Hadn't known she'd held on to the lullaby they made as children, a tune their mother used to hum when storms threatened the roof. He looked away, pretending to stir the pot so she wouldn't see the change in his face. The door creaked suddenly. Wind pushed through the gaps around the frame, bringing the sharp sting of outside cold. Lily gripped her doll tighter. "Just the wind," Elias said. But the tension stayed. Later, he set the food on the table. Lily slowly, eyes tracking the window as if expecting someone to appear on the other side of the glass. Elias sat across from her. "Did your mother ever mention a man named Banning?" Lily's spoon paused. Her shoulders tightened. "He said he owned our home," she murmured. "He said Mama would stay as long as he said." A hollow quiet settled between them. The fire hissed softly. Outside, the chimes tapped again, a thin sound stretching through the wind. Elias leaned back, the chair's legs groaning. "We'll keep low here a while," he said. "Storms will cover our tracks." Lily nodded, but fear lingered like a shadow behind her eyes. As the evening deepened, Elias fixed a place for her to sleep, a cot near the hearth where the heat would settle around her. She lay down, clutching the doll under her chin. The flames dimmed into a steady glow. Night pressed against the windows, ice whispering along the plains and thin white trails. Lily spoke softly. "Do you think he'll find us?" Elias didn't answer right away. He listened to the wind curling around the cabin's edges. Listened to the fire settling into embers. Listened for hoofbeats in the dark. Finally, he said, "He'll look." A pause. "But he won't take you." Lily breathed out a long, shaky sigh. Then she hummed again. That same tune. That same familiar rise and fall. The lullaby he had forgotten until today. The song filled the cabin like a ghost of warmth, reaching into corners the fire couldn't touch. It pressed memories against the cold, holding them in place for a little while. Elias sat by the window until her humming faded into soft sleep. He watched the dark tree line, every shift of branch, every stir of wind. And somewhere out there, far down the ridge, a single, distant horse cried out in the night. A reminder, a warning, the threat growing closer with every hour. Inside, Lily slept beneath firelight. A fragile warmth, a beginning, a home rekindled, whether Elias wanted one or not. The morning came slow, heavy with low gray clouds that swallowed the ridge. Elias stepped onto the porch, boots scraping frost, while the wind chimes offered a faint, uneasy rattle that barely cut through the quiet. Cold clung to the air like a warning, the kind that made a man check his six without knowing why. Inside, Lily ate from a wooden bowl, small hands tied around the rim. The fire crackled behind her, sending soft bursts of warmth into the room. Each crackle felt like a promise. Each gust of wind outside felt like a challenge. The lion scanned the tree line while sipping black coffee. He could feel them out there. Not close yet, but coming. The silence told him more than any tracks could. He stepped inside, closing the door gently. Lily looked up. "Cold?" she asked. He nodded. "Colder than it should be." She set the bowl down with slow, careful movements. "Is he coming?" Elias knelt beside her. "Maybe not today," he said. "But he will." The fire popped sharply. Lily flinched. The warmth wavered for a moment, overpowered by the cold creeping through the seams of the cabin. Elias stood and took the rifle from above the mantel. He checked the chamber. Clean. Loaded. Ready. Outside, a crow shrieked, one note, sharp, cutting across the stillness. Lily's eyes darted toward the window. Elias laid a hand on her shoulder. "It's just a bird." But the tightening in his chest didn't ease. By midday, the clouds thickened. Snowflakes spun in slow, drifting patterns, touching the ground before melting instantly. A false winter. A sign of colder things coming. Lily sat on the floor near the hearth, sewing a loose thread on her doll. Her humming carried through the room, soft and tremulous. The same tune as always. The same echo of something Elias thought he'd lost long ago. He tried to focus on chopping wood outside. Each swing of the axe echoed off the hills, sharp against the thickening frost. But the trees didn't answer back. Only the sound of distant horses, so faint he questioned whether he heard them at all. He carried the split logs inside. Warmth rushed out to greet him. Lily looked up, her voice small. "You heard something?" Elias paused. She was too perceptive for her age. Or maybe fear sharpens senses quicker than time. "I heard distance," he said. "Not danger." But even he didn't believe it fully. The afternoon darkened early. Clouds rolled down the ridge like slow thunder, and the cabin dimmed until the fire was the only true light in the room. Elias lit a lantern. The flame flickered twice before settling. Lily stood close to him. "Tell me about her," she said quietly. "My mama." Elias swallowed. He didn't sit. Couldn't. Too restless. "She was kind," he said. "And stubborn." Lily smiled faintly. "So am Madge." He allowed himself a small exhale. "You are." Silence wrapped around them again. Not comfortable silence. The kind that waits for something to break it. Another crow cried out, closer this time. The sound stabbed through the quiet. Lily moved toward the window. Elias stopped her gently. "No closer," he said. She obeyed, clutching her doll to her chest. He stepped outside alone. The cold bit instantly through his coat, the sky bruised with swirling gray. He scanned the ridge. Snow swirled thick enough to blur shapes. That's when he saw it. A single rider's silhouette at the far tree line. Still, watching. The air thinned in Elias's lungs. Then the silhouette turned and disappeared into the woods. Not approaching. Not retreating. Just shifting position. He walked back inside, jaw clenched. Lily read his face instantly. "They're here," she whispered. He didn't answer. Just added wood to the fire, watching sparks rise like small, frantic warnings. Warmth fought the cold back, but the cold was patient. That evening, he barred the door. Lily helped, lifting the wooden beam with both hands, though the weight dragged her arms down. She refused to let go until the bar were set. The fire glowed amber. The cabin breathed warmth. Yet outside, the wind scraped along the walls like a living thing searching for a way in. Lily sat close to Elias on the floor. Her voice trembled. "He won't stop, will he?" "No," Elias said. "But neither will I." She leaned against him, small and tired and trusting. The humming returned, faint as a memory, threading through the heat of the hearth. Each note steadied her. But Elias wasn't soothed. He listened to the humming, listened to the fire, listened to the wind. And beneath it all, he heard hooves again. Closer. Confident. Night closed in around the cabin. Warmth filled the room. Cold pressed in from every side. The shadow had arrived on the ridge. And by sunrise, it would be at the door. The morning light crawled into the cabin slow, thick, reluctant, as if it already knew what waited outside. Elias opened the shutter an inch. Cold air life through the gap, carrying the crunch of hooves in frozen dirt. Not many. 3. Maybe 4. Close. Lily sat on the floor, knees to her chest, the doll tucked beneath her chin. The fire behind her breathed warmth into the room, but her eyes stayed locked on the door. Silence pressed against her like a weight. Elias felt it too. He stepped outside. The wind chimes gave a small, brittle clatter, the kind that didn't belong to morning, but to warning. The chill was sharp enough to sting. Snow from the night before had hardened into thin crusts that cracked under his boots. Down the road sat 3 horses. 3 riders. Men with clean coats, stiff hats, and confidence shaped into their posture. Not raiders. Not drifters. Bannings. The tallest dismounted first. Boots landed in the dust with practiced authority. He walked forward, each step slow, deliberate. The other 2 stayed mounted, watching. "Morning," the tall man said. His voice held a smoothness that didn't match the cold. "Looking for someone." Elias didn't return the greeting. He kept his hands loose at his sides, near but not on the holster. The man smiled thinly. "Child went missing from the Banning estate. Owner's real torn up about it. Owner. The word slid across the air like a blade. Elias lifted his chin just enough. I haven't seen anyone. The man's smile didn't fade, but it sharpened. Mind if we look around? Elias stepped forward, blocking the porch. No need. The man studied him. Really studied him. Like he was cataloging flaws in a structure he planned to break. Behind Elias, a floorboard inside creaked. Soft. Quick. Lily shifting her weight. The man's eyes flicked past him toward the shuttered window. Only for a moment. But enough. We heard singing, he said. Little voice, little tune. Elias kept his face still. Wind scraped over the yard. The chimes gave a low, uncertain rattle. Then he said, wind plays tricks. The man let silence hang long enough to make it uncomfortable. The two riders behind him shifted, horses snorting steam into the air. Finally, he exhaled. Well, he said, Mr. Banding just wants the girl safe. She's invaluable. Responsibility. Responsibility. That was worse than owner. Elias didn't answer. The man brushed dust off his gloves. Rumor is a rider came through these parts. Dying man. Said he was bringing the child to someone. His gaze hardened. Someone like you. Elias felt the cold press deeper. They knew far too much. He lowered his voice. I didn't invite trouble here. That's the thing, the man replied. Trouble don't need an invite. He turned his horse, mounted with an easy swing. But before riding off, he leaned down in the saddle. You tell that little voice, he said softly, the one singing lullabies, Banning don't take kindly to thieves. Elias's jaw looked. I'm no thief. The man shrugged. Then you've got nothing to worry about. They rode off slow, deliberate, leaving hoof prints deep in the half-frozen dirt. Elias watched until the riders faded into the trees. Only then did he step back inside. Warmth embraced him immediately. Firelight flickered along the walls. Lily sat exactly where he'd left her, but her knuckles were white around the doll. Who was it? She asked. Men looking for someone, he replied. She swallowed. Me. Elias didn't confirm it. Didn't he too? They know, she whispered. He sat on the stool near the hearth. Not everything, he said. But enough. Lily's breath hitched. The room went tight with the quiet she brought with her sadness. He reached into his coat, pulled out the stranger's map, and spread it on the table. A line drawn. A destination crossed. A warning written in silence. We leave before nightfall, he said. Lily hugged the doll closer. The fire crackled, a burst of warmth that fought back the growing chill inside the cabin. But the wind outside began to rise, dragging the chimes into a harsher rattle. Each metallic tap spelled the same truth. Banning's man had drawn the first line in the dust, and Elias would have to choose whether to cross it or erase it with force. The sun fell early behind the ridge, swallowed by a slab of gray clouds that looked thick enough to suffocate light. Elias shut the shutters tight. The cabin felt smaller with each bar he dropped into place. Warmth from the fire pushed outward, but the cold pressed harder, slipping through cracks like a warning. Lily sat near the hearth, knees pulled up, the doll tucked beneath her chin. Her humming was faint tonight. Uncertain. It drifted through the room like a candle fighting to stale it. Elias checked the rifle, then the revolver, then the ammunition box. Each click of metal sounded louder than it should have. Too loud for a child's ears. But she didn't flinch. Outside, the wind swept along the cabin walls. Not a constant wind. A deliberate one. Broken by pauses. Broken by footsteps. Elias froze. He glanced at Lily, held one finger to his lips, and leaned closer to the door. Silence. Then a twig snapped. A horse laugh carried through the trees. A second voice hushed it. Lily whispered, "They're here, aren't they?" "We stay quiet," Elias murmured. "You stay behind me." The fire snapped, sending a spark onto the stone hearth. Lily jerked in surprise, then covered her mouth to muffle a sound. Elias moved to the window, lifted the corner of the curtain a hair's width. Shadows. 3, 4? Hard to tell in the shifting dark. One stepped into view. He held a lantern. Its flame bobbed like a severed soul in the gloom. The man surveyed the yard. Boots sunk into the frost-hardened dirt. He scraped a line in it with his heel. A challenge written in dust. Elias let the curtain fall. "Are they going to break in?" Lily whispered. "Only if I let them." A shout pierced the silence, followed by laughter, followed by a rock thudding against the porch post. The sound vibrated through the wood. Lily flinched hard. Elias steadied her shoulder. "They want fear, that's all." But he heard the creak of saddles, the shifting of weight, men dismounting. The siege had begun. He banked the fire low to keep the light from spilling through the windows. Shadows lengthened. The warmth dimmed. Lily pressed closer. Outside, the men prowled, boots crunching, lanterns swinging. Occasional taps against the siding, testing, teasing, taunting. A man's voice called out, slow and sweet like syrup masking venom. "Elias Ward, hand over the girl, and we go easy on your roof." Lily's breath hitched. Elias said nothing. Another voice chimed in. "Banning pays double if she's breathing." A pause. "Triple if she's scared." Lily shivered. Elias's jaw tightened. The fire popped again, noisier this time. One of the men outside must have heard it. Footsteps approached the front door, stopped. Then a sharp rap rattled the wood. Elias raised his rifle. Lily swallowed, her voice tiny. "What do we do?" "We hold," he said. "And we wait." A moment of quiet. Then breaking glass. A lantern hurled at the side of the cabin. It burst with a hiss. Flames licked the edge of the wall before snow smothered them out. "Just giving you a warning," someone yelled. "Next one hits the roof." Elias breathed slow, steady. He cocked the rifle. Metal clicked. Lily flinched again. Night thickened. Snow began falling, light at first, then heavier, muffling the world but not enough to hide the men's movements. One man trudged toward the back door. Elias heard his boots slide on the ice. A low curse, then a whisper to another unseen figure. Lily crept closer. "Why won't they leave?" "Because they think they've already won," Elias said quietly. "They're wrong." The men regrouped near the front porch. Murmurs floated through the dark. Plans whispered. Threats formed. Elias steadied his breath. Every instinct an impulse. "Wait. Hold. Don't reveal the rifle too soon." The doorknob jiggled. Slow. Testing the latch. Testing Elias. Lily pressed into his side. He raised the rifle to his shoulder. Silence settled like snow. Dense. Waiting. Then a voice outside said, "Light it." A spark. A flame. A second lantern igniting. But this time, the fire didn't hit the cabin. It illuminated the rider behind them, the silhouette Elias had seen the night before, now closer, fully visible. Not a foe. A messenger of swords. But the men didn't know that. They panicked, shouted, turned their guns toward the rider in confusion. Elias acted. He threw the door open. Wind blasted inside, freezing the warm air instantly. He fired once. A warning shot into the sky. The men scattered behind the woodpile and wagon. Snow burst around them in small explosions. Lily crawled behind the table, trembling, clutching her doll like a lifeline. The men cursed. One shouted, "Ward wants a fight." Elias chambered another round. "No," he muttered. "I want you gone." But they weren't leaving. Not tonight. Not until someone bled. He stepped back inside and latched the door once more. The cabin swallowed him in darkness. Lily's small voice trembled through the gloom. Is this the end? No, Elias whispered. It's the beginning. Outside, the men regrouped. Boots fronting. Whispers rising. Lanterns flaring. Inside, warmth from the dying fire barely held. Cold crept along the floorboards. The siege tightened its grip, and dawn was still hours away. The sky had not yet decided to turn to dawn. It hung low and bruised, pressing darkness into the cabin like a hand trying to smother a flame. Elias stood by the shutter, rifle steady, breath slow. He felt the cold first, creeping in, testing the seams. Then the noise, soft boots crunching frost, circling again. Lily crouched beside the hearth, arms wrapped around the doll, her small frame barely rising and falling with breath. The fire had dwindled to a thin glow. Warmth clung to her cheeks, but fear lived under her skin. Elias whispered, "No matter what happens, you stay behind me." She nodded, but her eyes didn't blink, didn't soften. She was past fear now. Somewhere deeper. A lantern flared outside, spilling gold through the cracks in the shutters. Men's voices carried with it, muttered, impatient, eager. A harsh laugh broke the quiet. Another voice cut it off. Ward's inside, someone hissed. He ain't walking out unless he crawls. Elias's grip tightened. Another man spoke, louder, the one who'd drawn the line in the dust the day before. "Bring me the girl, Ward," he called. "You hear? Bring her out now and we'll let you breathe a little longer." Silence swallowed his words. Even the wind paused. Elias opened the door an inch. Cold punched through the gap. Snow drifted sideways. Lanterns bobbed like hungry eyes. He stepped out onto the porch. The wind chimes gave one sharp rattle, a thin metallic cry swallowed by the night. 6 men stood in the yard. Rifles slung. Coats drawn. Faces unreadable in lantern glow. Elias stepped forward. "You get one chance to walk away." The tall man laughed. "You think this is your land? Think you get to call the terms?" "This is my home," Elias said. "And she's not yours." The man's smile died. "Banning says she is." He motioned with 2 fingers. 2 riders dismounted. They spread out, flanking the porch. Elias's breath fogged in front of him. Slow. Controlled. Cold seeped through his boots, biting his ankles. But heat rose in his chest, sharp, steady, anger thawing something old inside him. The wind snapped the lantern flame sideways. Darkness rushed in. For a moment, everything stilled. Then the tall man shouted, "Take the cabin." Snow exploded outward behind Elias. Bootsteps thundered toward the porch. Elias fired once. A clean, sharp crack that echoed against the ridge. A man fell into the snow, shouting in shock. Chaos erupted. Another shot tore into the porch rail beside Elias, splintering wood across his sleeve. He ducked, fired again. Lantern lights swung wildly. Men cursed. One slipped on ice, falling hard. A rifle cracked from the left side of the cabin. The bullet punched through the shutter, spraying wood shards inside. Lily screamed. Not loud, but enough. Elias felt something break loose in him. He charged down the steps, firing at the nearest lantern. Glass shattered. Darkness swallowed half the yard. The cold brought in. Snow whipped around them in dizzy spirals. Shapes moved. Boots pounded. Voices clashed. He grabbed the fallen man's coat, dragging it over the lantern flame to choke the light. Another crack of gunfire grazed the post inches above his head. He rolled behind the water trough. Reloaded. Breathing harsh now. Cold burning his lungs. From inside the cabin, Lily's humming rose, thin, shaky, the last comfort she had. The same lullaby. The same chime-like rhythm. The sound steadied Elias. The tall man barked, "Get the girl. Burn the house if you have to." Fire. That word dropped like a stone. One of the men lit a bundle of dry brush. Flames licked upward. He ran toward the porch. Elias shot him in the leg. The burning bundle hit the snow, hissing as it died. The tall man snarled, "You're just one man, Ward. You can't hold us." Elias stood slowly from behind the trough. Storm wind pushed around him. Snow clung to his hair. His breath fogged steady. "I'm not holding you," he said. "I'm ending this." He rushed forward, firing twice. Both shots hit. 2 men dropped. One crawling. One still. The tall man spun to fire back. Elias dove behind the woodpile, bullets snapping through the bark like hot needles. Cold bit into his fingers. Warmth vanished in his hands. He reloaded by feel. The tall man shouted into the storm, "You're fighting the wrong side of the world, Ward. Banning owns this land, owns that girl." Elias rose from behind the woodpile, rifle leveled. "She belongs to no one." He fired. The tall man staggered, dropped his gun, fell backward into the snow, breath spilling from him in angry clouds. The remaining riders fled into the trees, boots pounding, lanterns swinging like dying stars. Their shouts scattered into the storm. Silence rolled in, heavy, complete, except for the wind dragging through the chimes, a faint, trembling whisper. Elias lowered the rifle. Snow swirled around him. Cold knotted his bones, but warmth waited inside. He stepped back into the cabin. Lily sat on the floor, still humming, still clutching the doll. Her voice cracked when she saw him. I heard shouting. "It's done," he said. Her breath shuddered out of her chest. "Are we safe?" He knelt, pulled her close. "For the first time," she cried. He held her until the fire regained its strength, until warmth finally pushed the cold back outside. But he knew the truth the wind was whispering through the chimes. Banning would not accept defeat. A storm bigger than this one was already on its way. Snow drifted in thin white veils across the yard as morning finally clawed its way past the storm. Elias pushed the broken shutter open with care. Cold air seeped inside, swirling around the room like a restless spirit tracing old scars. The cabin was barely holding warmth, the fire reduced to a sleepy glow, the stones cold at their edges. Lily sat wrapped in a wool blanket, her eyes red from a night that had lasted too long. The doll rested in her lap, threadbare and trembling with her small hands. Elias knelt to feed the fire. Sparks lifted, tiny survivors trying to rise. She watched him, quiet, waiting. "Will he come?" she finally asked. "Banning?" Elias stirred the coals. "He will, but not today." The wind rattled the remaining shutter. The sound crawled down Lily's spine. She clutched the doll tighter. Elias added wood to the fire. Warmth bloomed again, slowly, stubbornly. But cold remained in the corners of the cabin, refusing to retreat entirely. He sat beside her. "Lily, you said your mama taught you that song." She nodded, head dipping slightly. "She sang it when she carried me to bed, when she was hiding me. Hiding you from Banning." A tremor ran through her shoulders. She whispered, "Mama said. He wanted to keep me like he kept her." Elias swallowed hard. The room tightened. Silence pressed down. He forced his voice steady. "How long were you with her before? Before she sent you away?" Lily didn't answer right away. She stared at the fire, as if searching inside the flames for something she'd forgotten. When she finally spoke, her voice was thin as smoke. "Mama said. She was running long before I was born." Her gaze lifted to Elias. "And she said the song would help me find family if something happened to her." The room went still. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. Elias felt a slow thaw inside his chest. Painful. Old. "What else did she tell you?" he asked. Lily hesitated. Then, softly, she told me her brother would find me if he ever heard the song. Elias froze. A heat that had nothing to do with the fire crawled up his throat. Memories he had shoveled dirt over came pounding back. Mary's laughter, her stubbornness, her habit of humming that same wandering tune when storms rolled in. Lily watched his face, expression uncertain. Was she right? She asked quietly. Would he? Elias couldn't speak for a moment. The fire cracked, shifting the silence. Lily waited. Finally, he nodded. Yes, he whispered. He would. The wind chose that moment to scrape along the roof, sharp, insistent. Lily jumped. Elias wrapped an arm around her shoulders. But she wasn't done. She reached into her doll's dress and pulled out a small cloth square, folded tight, edges worn soft from hiding. She placed it in his hand. Mama said only he would know what this means. Elias unfolded it. The moment he saw the stitching, breath left him. A circle. A star. 2 initials inside, M&E. Mary and Elias. A sigil they'd carved on everything when they were children. On a fence post, on a tin cup, on the underside of their mother's old table. A promise that they'd look out for each other, no matter the world. He felt the weight of years crash into him. I haven't seen this mark since. His voice cracked. He tried again. Since your mother was still a girl. Lily blinked at him, confused. You know it? It's ours, Elias said. Mine and hers. Lily's breath caught. Her hands trembled. My mama said her brother had a scar on his left thumb, from carving the mark 2 deep ones. Elias turned his hands, showed her the thin white line along the joint of his thumb, the mark he'd carried for decades. Lily's eyes widened. Tears brimmed, not from fear, but recognition. You're him, she whispered. You're her brother. Warmth surged through Elias so sharply it hurt. He pulled her gently closer, her small frame folding into him like she'd been shaped to fit in that moment. I didn't know, he said against her hair. If I'd known she was alive, if I'd known she had you. She cried, a small, silent cry that tightened against his chest. Her tears soaked into his shirt, warming the fabric. Outside, the wind pushed against the walls again, but it no longer sounded like a threat. Just weather. Just the world continuing. Elias rested his chin lightly on her head. I should have found her, he murmured. I should have tried longer. You're here now, Lily whispered. Mama said, if you ever heard the song again, you'd come back. Her words settled into him like embers reviving a fire. Slowly, irrevocably. A thud hit the cabin wall. A fresh reminder. Elias rose, pulling Lily behind him. Boots. Someone outside. Too light to be a man. Too scattered to be steady. He cracked the door. A deer bounded away, startled from its shelter. The cold rushed in briefly. He shut the door again. Lily's breath slowed. But the message was clear. Danger hadn't vanished. It had only stepped aside for the truth to surface. Elias sat his rifle near the door, then sat with Lily again. We'll leave by morning, he said. Before Banning regroups, before he rides with more men. Lily wiped her face. Where will we go? Somewhere he won't find us, Elias answered. Somewhere warm. She leaned against him, trusting. The fire glowed stronger, flames lifting higher as if encouraged. Outside, the cold wind circled the cabin one more time. But inside, warmth settled around them. Not just from the fire. From something older. Something reclaimed. Lily whispered, almost smiling. Mama said, you'd come when I needed you. Elias closed his eyes, letting the warmth take hold. And I will, he said. From now on. Snow softened overnight into a thin white dusting, the kind that glimmered instead of threatened. Elias stepped out onto the porch with Lily beside him, both bundled against the morning chill. The wind chimes stirred gently, not the frantic rattle of storms past, but a slow, peaceful music that drifted across the yard like a blessing. Lily lifted her face toward the sound. They're not scared anymore, she whispered. Elias looked at her. No, he said. Neither are we. The cabin bore the scars of the siege: splintered boards, a cracked shutter, sat on the eaves where fire had nearly caught. But warmth spilled from its open door, smoke curling from the chimney in a steady rise. The night had taken much, but it hadn't taken them. Inside, the fire was bright again. Lily's small coat hung by the hearth to dry. Her doll rested on the mantel, clean now, stitched where she'd mended its torn arm. Elias watched her move through the room with quiet familiarity, touching things lightly, as if claiming them piece by piece. He packed what little they could carry: food, blankets, a few tools, the map with Banning's mark. They'd leave before noon, move south, find a town where Banning's reached the end. Find a future wider than the ridge. But even as he packed, he couldn't ignore the lingering cold crawling along the floorboards. The outside world was still dangerous, still angry, still hunting. Lily approached him, eyes steady. Will he come again? Elias tightened the rope around a bundle. Banning? He nodded once. Maybe. Men like him don't forget what they think belongs to them. She swallowed. Then we keep running? He looked at her. At the girl who carried Mary's stubbornness in her bones, Mary's gentleness in her voice, Mary's strength in her small, fierce grip on the world. No, he said. We keep living. Running's got nothing to do with it. A knock sounded behind them, sharp, sudden. Elias reached for the revolver. Lily froze. He cracked the door open. A woman from the homestead downriver stood in the cold, her shawl wrapped tight. Behind her, two men carried supplies: planks, nails, bundles of food, a tin of oil. We heard what happened, she said softly. We ain't much, but folks don't take kindly to Banning's ways. Thought you two might use a hand. Elias stepped aside. Lily's eyes widened as the neighbors entered, placing wood by the hearth, setting food on the table, mending what they could. Warmth spread through the cabin, warmth not from fire, but from presence. From voices. From small kindnesses. One man pointed at the broken shutter. Storm will take that clean off if we don't fix it. Elias nodded with gratitude he didn't yet know how to voice. Thank you. The woman knelt by Lily, brushing her hair gently. You stay close to your uncle now. He'll see you safe. Lily's eyes lifted to Elias, surprised, shy, hopeful. He nodded once. Yes, he said quietly. She will. As the neighbors worked, Lily carried pieces of wood to them, humming under her breath. Her lullaby filled the cabin, soft and warm, stitching the silence into something whole. Hours passed. The repairs finished. The visitors left with soft farewells and promises to keep watch. Afternoon sunlight spilled across the floorboards, golden, gentle, warming the cold corners at last. Elias saddled a horse. Lily climbed up with practiced courage, settling in front of him. The wind chimes rang again, this time bright, playful, carried by a friendly breeze. Lily smiled. That sounds different. It does, Elias said. Storm's gone. They rode down the ridge, leaving the cabin behind. But not leaving it broken. Not leaving it alone. Each step of the horse sent puffs of snow upward. Trees shimmered with melting frost. The world felt wider now. Lighter. As if something had finally shifted. Lily hummed as they traveled. The same tune. But new somehow. Not a plea anymore. A memory carried forward. Elias listened, the rhythm settling into him, warming a place he hadn't touched in years. He felt Mary in that sound. He felt the future in it too. Near the bend in the trail, Lily leaned back against him. Will we be happy where we're going? Elias looked toward the southern pass. Sunlight spilled through it like an open door. Yes, he said. We will. They rode on. The chime's song faded behind them, no longer lonely. No longer afraid. Just a gentle echo, carried in Lily's humming as they disappeared into the light. If this story stirred a memory or two, saddle up with us again. Hit subscribe and help keep these old frontier tales alive. Out here, every name, every trail, every sunset still matters. So till we meet again, friend, keep your hat tipped to the past and your heart pointed west.